Today I am going to show you a very beautiful reincarnation manhwa story. So, let's get started. The main character began his story and said that he had been endlessly reborn for 100 years. In his first life, the guy decided to go to Murim. He learned only basic techniques and the art of wielding a three-pronged sword. But this was not enough to protect himself. The bandits who met on his way spared no effort and brutally beat the guy. The main character died for the first time from his wounds and injuries, but in the end, he was reborn, after which he died again and was reborn again. The main character retained memories of all his lives and sometimes even ended up in the bodies of other people. But after a while, the guy died again from the terrible wounds he received. In one of his lives, the main character was lucky enough to study with the best masters. Wanting to become the strongest in the world, the guy worked tirelessly. Every day, the main character overcame himself and confidently walked towards his goal. Perseverance and work yielded results. After a while, the guy became invincible in battle, and it seemed to him that this opportunity was given to him by heaven. A man stood on a high rock and looked indifferently into the distance. The whole world around was gray and colorless. Only a lonely butterfly brought a bright contrast to this dull landscape with its unexpected appearance. She obediently sat on the arm of an elderly man who seemed to have been waiting for her appearance for a long time. The gray-haired old man looked carefully at the butterfly, and his exhausted face only indicated that he was very tired. It seemed to the man that his rebirths were more than the flapping of the wings of the butterfly that sat on his hand. The world around was gray and inhospitable, and the old man thought that he no longer had a goal. Now he was the strongest in Murim, and there was no one who could compare with him. But this did not bring any joy to the old man. The butterfly, which was the only bright element of this world, flew away, leaving the elderly man alone with his thoughts. The main character looked at his elderly hand for the last time, as if summing up the entire path of his life. Finally, the old man thought that most of all he wanted to just relax in heaven. After that, his eyes began to slowly close. For some time, darkness reigned, after which the main character saw the light again. His eyes began to open. The inhospitable gray landscapes were replaced by bright ornaments. The old man looked at his hand. It was different. Not a trace remained of scars and wrinkles. His skin became smooth and soft. The surprised young guy lay in a soft bed and looked at his hand, not believing what was happening. The guy's face showed horror at the realization of what had happened, and his hand trembled with fear. The next moment, the main character screamed loudly, asking why he was reborn again. The guy jumped up and began to be indignant. He believed that these endless rebirths should have stopped because he lived to the fullest. Suddenly, someone timidly turned to the main character and took his hand. A girl who was almost crying sat next to the guy and asked what kind of strange things he said. Suddenly the guy was struck by a headache, and he began to remember how he used to spend time with the stranger. The girl was clearly not a stranger to him. The main character held his head and tried to come to terms with the pain, and the girl turned to the guy again and asked if everything was okay with him. The young man looked at the girl and remembered that it was his nanny. She was a control freak. There was also a guy in the room. The main character recognized him. He was his childhood best friend and the sworn brother of the owner of the body. After that, our hero looked at himself in the mirror and was very surprised because he realized that the cause of death of the previous owner of his new body. The guy thought with annoyance that he had moved into this body because this guy who was looking at him from the mirror had no strength left to live. Unexpectedly, the main character turned to the nanny and asked for forgiveness for making her worry, and added that he just had a nightmare. Without letting go of the guy's hand, the girl suggested that the reason for this was recent events and the fact that the guy had been unconscious for several days. Then the nanny suggested calling a doctor. The main character refused this offer because he was fine and added that he just needed to rest. The girl continued to show concern and offered to bring food, but the guy also refused and said that he would like to be alone. The next moment, the main character, without thinking out loud, said that he needed to understand how to live in this body now. What she heard shocked the nanny. The girl immediately ran to the side and asked what the guy meant. The main character tried to get out and said that he simply expressed himself incorrectly. After that, the guy asked not to consider him crazy. The girl thought for a moment and silently looked at the main character. Finally, she said that the guy looked a little crazy and also spoke strange words. The main character exhaled and thought that it was difficult to argue with this, and it was his own fault because he immediately began to lie. The guy tried to rectify the situation and asked the girl to bring him food in an hour and assured her that nothing bad would happen to him. Hearing this, the nanny's anxious look immediately changed to a calm and kind one. The girl believed the main character. The satisfied nanny got ready to leave and said that she would prepare the guy his favorite dish. Finally, the girl hoped that the main character really just wanted to relax. The guy reassured her again, saying that everything would be fine. The girl, along with the best friend of the previous owner of the body, left and slammed the door behind them. The guy was left alone. He resignedly leaned back in bed and began to think about his further actions. The main character suggested with annoyance that this would not end. The guy looked at the bizarre patterns on the ceiling and thought about why he was reborn again. Memories of past days surfaced in the head of the main character. This happened because the thoughts of the previous owner of the body and his thoughts were intertwined. He remembered that the previous owner of the body was called Suk Jinho. He was not a rich and not very successful person. He was the illegitimate son of a member of the Sang-jae family. The guy grew up in a more or less calm environment, but after returning home, he had to face contempt. Suk Jinho reacted very pessimistically to this and increasingly began to refuse food and close himself off from others. It was as if he was preparing for death. As a result, when Suk Jinho began to slowly go out like a candle and before he could take his last breath, the main character moved into his body. He was indignant that the guy decided to commit suicide while in the prime of his life, and all because of the relationship of his family. Moreover, there were people on his side who valued his life more than their own. One day, the guy's best friend noticed that on a cold winter evening, Suk Jinho was dressed very lightly. He gave him his outer clothing and asked permission to take him home. The nanny immediately showed up and was indignant that the guy returned so late, although he said that he would go out for a walk for a short time. Suk Jinho could only answer that he didn't notice how quickly time flew by. Suddenly, the guy's named brother grabbed him and quickly carried him home in his arms. The girl asked her master to sit down quickly because the food was already ready, but the guy was unhappy that he was treated like a child. Remembering all this, the main character did not understand how the previous owner of the body could leave these wonderful people alone. After rebirth, the guy walked around the yard, which was covered with snow, and thought a lot. Finally, he returned to his room, but was still thinking that, given his previous experience, the same thought kept popping up in his head. The main character suggested that perhaps rebirth was not at all a grace given to him, because he could have missed something in a past life. The guy looked at the shining moon and thought that although he had seen a lot, he could not understand the choice of the previous owner of the body. Looking into the eyes of people who loved and cared for Suk Jinho, the main character became ashamed because he was not who they took him for. Closing his eyes, the guy thought about what Suk Jinho wanted and what he wanted to do before he died. The main character sat on the window and looked at the steam that was slowly rising up. The guy suddenly realized that the soul that had left the body was trying with all its might to convey its will to him through white steam. The main character seemed to turn to Suk Jin and said that although the guy was terribly weak, he was still able to convey his desire to him. The guy promised to fulfill it. The main character said that having once conquered Murim, this would not be difficult for him. The guy asked him not to worry, because he could make the offenders regret what they had done and admit their mistakes. Early morning came. The first rays of the sun illuminated our hero's new home. The guy woke up so early for a reason because he remembered his promise and the fact that the previous owner of his body wanted to prove that he was right. The main character hurried to leave his room in order to begin his path to achieving his goals. To fulfill Suk Jin's desire, the main character began to train. Because the more wealth he had in his hands, the more strength was needed to protect it. The first martial art that the guy needed to learn was the heavenly dance of Taiji Quan. It perfectly helped to improve physical fitness and build muscles. The sharp movements of the main character caused the air around to diverge in different directions. This was necessary in order to master a vision that took the guy a lot of lives to perfect. Changing natural muscles was a very painful process, but it was impossible to do without it. The guy endured grueling training. Although the main character was ready for pain, now it was simply unbearable. His whole new body was trembling in pain because it was not at all adapted to such colossal loads. Gritting his teeth, the main character continued the grueling workout, encouraging himself that he needed to endure a little longer. Despite the cold season, sweat dripped from the guy's face in a stream, but all these incredible efforts yielded results. A small clot of mysterious energy began to form in the hands of the protagonist. Having achieved the result, the guy's face remained calm and peaceful, and the energy in his hands exuded a bright light. Finally, the main character decided that it was enough to begin with, and although the result as he considered was not ideal, but now he was able to accumulate energy. The second attempt to accumulate energy in my hands went without much effort, and the end result was a little better. Suddenly, the main character was distracted by something. Someone very nervously turned to the guy, calling him master. It was a nanny who was very worried and could not understand how her Suk-jin could sweat in such a cold. She handed the guy a handkerchief and asked if anything hurt her master. The main character hastened to reassure the girl and said that she was worrying about him in vain. The guy with a smile on his face asked if he looked like a sick person. The girl was a little taken aback because it didn't look like Suk-jin, whom she knew well, but she soon warned that if the guy was so zealous, he might fall ill again. Hearing this, the main character smiled slightly. He was not yet accustomed to such attention and care from the nanny. The guy said that he was doing an unusual exercise and was studying martial art. The girl was very surprised and could not believe what she heard. Suk-jin added that in order to protect the nanny, he needed to become strong. The girl was touched by this answer, but said that she herself could protect both herself and the guy. After that, she again advised him to take better care of his health. The main character turned to the nanny and said that she was unlikely to succeed because he was asked to do something. The girl was very surprised because her master had not met anyone recently except her and Yoon. Suk-jin also asked that if the nanny met Yoon, then call him to him because the guy wanted to teach him this too. For some time, the girl silently looked at her master with distrust and misunderstanding. Still, she threw extraneous thoughts away and thought that she should have trusted the guy, because she had never seen him so stubborn. As she left, the girl looked at the main character with a smile and said to herself that she would support her master. Winter passed unnoticed for our heroes. Young plants were warmed by the warm spring sun. As the main character Yoon wanted, he began training in martial arts and already had significant success. From the side, Suk-jin silently watched the guy and made sure that the exercise was calculated correctly. Finally, he said that his assumptions were correct and did not deceive him because Yoon had the ideal physique to study the heavenly iron fist. After this, the main character clapped his hands, which symbolized that the training was over for today. Smiling, Yoon asked his master to evaluate his progress, because it seemed to him that he had become a little stronger. Suk-jin answered honestly that at first, he thought that mastering this art would take a lot of time for the guy, but now he thought that Yoon would soon learn it. The main character added that if a guy masters this martial art, he will be able to resist even powerful people. So he had to continue in the same spirit. Yoon was very pleased with these words. He thanked the master for giving him such a chance and promised that he would become a strong warrior to help him. Suk-jin asked the guy not to belittle himself and added that he was like a brother to him. From such touching words, Yoon's face turned red and his eyes filled with tears of happiness. Unable to withstand the influx of such strong emotions, the guy hugged Suk-jin tightly. The main character was very surprised and not knowing what to say. He just thought about how emotional Yoon was. Immediately, the nanny came out of the house with a tray in her hands. She offered the guys a little refreshing water to drink with a smile. Suk-jin happily accepted this offer. Suddenly, he heard someone's loud voice. From behind the wall that fenced off the courtyard from the street, orders were heard that it was necessary to hurry up because tomorrow guests would come to some gentleman. Suk-jin was surprised by this and asked what was the matter. The girl told her master that tomorrow the head of the clan would have a celebration. The main character completely forgot about this, despite the fact that he had already been told about it before. Suddenly the nanny asked if the guy was okay. Suk-jin didn't understand why the girl suddenly asked this. The nanny said with annoyance that the guy would have to meet his brothers at the holiday. After that, she suggested that it would still be difficult for Suk-jin to see them. The main character crossed his arms and was skeptical about this assumption. The guy advised the girl to worry not about him, but about his brothers. Nanny was very surprised and could not believe such determination of the main character. The girl looked at her master and thought that he had changed a lot since that incident. After that, the nanny admired how brave Suk-jin was and said that she shouldn't have left behind him. The girl added that she had already prepared the gift and therefore the guy did not need to worry about anything. The main character was surprised because he knew that they did not have money for this. The nanny said that they didn't have to buy rice with money. Besides, she sewed the clothes that Suk-jin wore herself. The main character looked at his clothes and couldn't stop being amazed at the girl's skills. The guy looked at the smiling nanny and could not believe that the people who surrounded him loved him so much, although they were essentially strangers to each other. Suk-jin turned to his friends and said that since he had a reliable nanny and Yoon, he could go on a holiday. The girl also added that this reception will be attended by famous personalities from all over the world, so if the main character shows his best side, he may be able to become a student of one of them. Suk-jin, calling these famous personalities old men, said that this was not necessary. After this, the main character added that he had changed and all this was thanks to the people who believed in him. The guy was sure that even greater changes awaited them in the future. A huge palace was visible on the horizon of fate. The main character said that today he would take the first step towards this, but so far, he could not tell his loved ones what exactly awaited them then. Suk-jin turned to his friends and asked if they were ready to continue being with him. Encouraged, Yoon and the nanny happily agreed to this and promised that they would always follow the main character. The very next day, the girl accompanied Yoon and Suk-jin to a holiday with the head of the clan. After some time, our heroes reached the large red palace in which the head of the clan was located. Suk-jin and Yoon silently walked forward, not paying attention to the gaze of passers-by. People were surprised to see the fourth young master here, because he had never left his house before. They knew that Suk-jin's behavior had changed, but they did not understand how this could happen in just one night. The main character didn't like that stranger were gossiping about him, but nothing could be done, because the guy understood that he really had lived a miserable life. Suddenly, someone blocked the path of our heroes and said that he did not believe that Suk-jin had really changed. A tall young guy with a sword in his hand will appear in front of the main character. Judging by his clothes, he was not a commoner. Suk-jin remembered that the guy who addressed him was called Suk-miho. The old acquaintance continued to say that today was the head of the clan's birthday and therefore, he could not let the main character pass further. Suk-jin did not understand what all this was about and recalled that he was the fourth young master and the guy who stood opposite was just an ordinary student. Suk-min replied that he was only a month younger than the master and asked him not to be arrogant. After that, the guy already wanted to remind who had the higher rank here. But Suk-jin was not at all surprised and said that Suk-min was just a second-rate warrior. These words hurt the guy. He replied that at his age it was a great success to reach such a post, after which he said that Suk-jin should keep quiet because he himself lived no better. The main character easily answered that he simply knew how to enjoy life. Suk-min got very angry and swung his fist. Suk-jin, not at all afraid, suggested that the guy wanted to fight and as if agreeing, said that the weather was good today and there were no witnesses. Suk-min immediately calmed down because he knew that there were quite a lot of people around and some of them were already carefully watching what was happening. Fortunately, Suk-jin said that he had work to do but asked the guy not to worry because he would soon fulfill his wish, perhaps even tomorrow. Suk-min got angry again and demanded that the main character not dare to evade. But the guy calmly walked past his old acquaintance and asked him not to be so angry. When leaving, Suk-jin thought that he just needed an opponent to test his strength and Suk-min was suitable for this because he had a good reputation in Shijiazhang. In addition, the main character felt that he had to return the favor to Suk-min for the pain he caused Suk-jin. Meanwhile, more and more people were gathering at the clan head's palace. Yoon was surprised by so many people and thought that the organizers of the holiday had gone a little overboard. Suddenly, Suk-jin noticed two elderly men in the crowd and said that the 5 colors of Clint could be seen on the flags of 10 central and western countries. The main character remembered that these strangers were the elders of Chonam and Hwasan. The guy said that they were members of very wealthy families who were far from these lands. Yoon believed that their presence here was a sign of respect for the head of their clan. The guy also added that a lot of guests had come and therefore they would have to wait a long time for their turn. Suk-jin said that nothing could be done and then asked if Yoon meant that he should have communicated more with people. But the guy replied that that was not the case. The main character thought that, because of the long line, they had time for a walk. The next moment, the guy drew attention to Sukman, saying that it was funny to see how he revolved around people and suggested that this was the only thing he knew how to do. Sukjin continued to look at Sukmin and was surprised that just a minute ago the guy was acting like God knows what. Yoon was trying to hold back his laughter. Suddenly, the elders surrounded the main character and began to discuss the guy, saying that there was nothing to see here, but there was something strange about him. The old men continued to examine Sukjin until he turned to them and asked what was the matter. The elderly men admitted that it was rude on their part and asked for forgiveness, but they simply could not ignore such an unusual physique. The old people began to wonder what the guy's name was and what clan he was from. They also assumed that the main character was self-taught and therefore asked how long he had been practicing martial arts. The guy reluctantly answered that his name was Suk Jin Ho and he was the fourth son of Mr. Suk. He saw no point in answering other questions and therefore hurried to leave. The old men blocked his path and asked the guy not to rush because he had not yet found out who they were. Suk Jin confidently answered that he knew them and clarified that they were the elders of the Jeonnim and Hwasen clans. After this, the main character considered that it was time for the old people to leave and said that if they needed any help, they could ask the servants for it. People who witnessed this conversation were surprised that Suk Jin dared to talk like that with the elders of the Jeonnim and Hwasen clans. One of the old men prepared to address the main character again. The next moment, he said that he had a proposal for the guy and asked if he wanted to go to Hwasen. The elderly man promised to make the guy the best master of Murim. The second elder also offered to join his clan because all the great 36 swordsmen were from Jeonnim. Suk Jin calmly replied that he was not eager to leave his reclusive lifestyle and therefore dared to refuse the elder's offers. The old man with a gray beard continued to insist on his point, saying that their whole life was a kind of teaching and therefore promised the guy to teach him their art if he went with him. Suk Jin apologized and said that he wanted to continue studying the martial art he had already started and advised the elders not to waste time on it. The main character said goodbye again and began to leave. But one of the elders did not want to let him go so easily. The old man sharply extended his hand to grab the guy's hand, but he failed to do this. Suk Jin made some barely noticeable movement which caused a small wind to rise. Because of this, the old man was unable to stop the guy. The elder was dumbfounded and surprised and silently looked after the main character for some time. The older man couldn't believe that Suk Jin had just managed to dodge. The second elder assumed that the guy was just lucky. But if this was not the case, then he had great potential. In any case, the old people did not expect to meet such a boy here. Stepping aside, Suk Jin said that they should have left immediately because they wasted their time. Yoon was worried whether everything would be fine because those old men were elders of powerful clans. Suk Jin replied that he did not owe them anything. Suddenly a man turned to our heroes and asked what he was doing here. Suk Jin greeted his uncle and said that they were waiting for their turn. The man was very surprised and asked why the guy was standing in line because they were not guests or strangers. After that, the uncle asked them to follow him. Suk Jin asked if it was possible to do this. The man replied that of course it was possible and he himself had never stood in line. The guys thanked their uncle for his help. Following his uncle, the main character thought that even he had, until recently, ignored Suk Jin. The guy suggested that his conversation with the elders interested him. Suk Jin smiled insidiously and continued to think that because of this, his uncle did not even hesitate to talk to him. Our heroes entered the palace of the head of the clan. For some time, they had to wait until they were received. A formidable gray-haired man sat on a magnificent throne. This was the head of the clan. The servant followed his master's orders and tried to quickly leave the room. The head of the clan began to be indignant at the fact that he had no one to rely on, because everyone did nothing but remain silent out of fear and suck up. Unexpectedly, another servant said that Suk Myung and Suk Jin wanted to meet Mr. Man and allowed them to come in. A moment later, our heroes were in a hurry to appear before the head of the clan. Seok Myung greeted his master and said that he came with Jin Ho, holding a large box in his hands. The main character bowed respectfully before the head of the clan and congratulated him on his birthday. Handing out the gift, the guy said that Yoon and his nanny had prepared it. The man accepted the gift, but was surprised that usually everyone said that they gave the gift themselves. Opening the box, The man said that there was nothing better than sincerity, and therefore he accepted the guy's gift with joy. The head of the clan appreciated Suk-jin's gift and said that it was excellent. He also said that he heard that the elders from the G clans were interested in the main character. The guy confirmed this. The man asked which of the two clans the guy would like to choose, but Suk-jin immediately answered that he was not interested in either of them. The main character again insisted that he wanted to continue studying the martial arts that he had already begun. The head of the clan laughed and said that he thought that the guy was hopeless, but it turned out that he had big plans. Suk-jin replied that he simply decided to start life from scratch. After this, the man offered his help to the guy, but the guy, thanking the head of the clan, replied that for now he could cope on his own. The man praised the main character, but suggested continuing the conversation next time. Suk-jin bowed respectfully again and said goodbye to his father. Within a moment, the head of the clan was left alone and could think about what had happened. The man was surprised that elders Hwasan and Jongnam showed interest in Suk-jin. Moreover, the guy himself spoke to him confidently. The head of the clan smiled and thought that he should have followed the main character. The next moment, the man called to himself a servant who was ready to fulfill any request of his master. The head of the clan threateningly ordered his faithful subordinate to look after Suk-jin. The servant immediately obeyed. The man decided to take these measures because he felt that there was clearly something in the main character and he should have found out more about it. Suk-jin left the palace of the clan head and breathed a sigh of relief because he thought that there was one less problem. Yoon asked his master not to talk about this out loud because someone might hear, but the main character reassured the guy and asked him not to worry about it. Suddenly, a guy appeared in front of Suk-jin, which attracted the attention of our hero. Jin-ho didn't know this guy. The stranger looked defiant and rudely asked the main character what he was saying. Suk-jin also rudely replied that the guy blocked his way and demanded that he step aside. The stranger was surprised by such impudence and said that he was originally going to have a friendly conversation. The main character did not believe these words and said that, in his opinion, the guy was only doing what he called for a fight. Then he looked at his opponent with a stern look. People who watched from the sidelines did not understand why the conflict arose, but recognized the stranger as a member of the Yi family from Hebei province. Yoon suggested that his master call someone for help, but Suk-jin-ho replied that this was not necessary. The main character assumed that the stranger was simply jealous because the elders did not approach them, so he decided to humiliate him in order to attract attention. The bully became very angry. Suk-jin remained as calm as ever and added that the stranger had no other reasons for fighting. Unable to withstand the humiliation and disdainful attitude towards himself, the stranger tightly clenched his hand into a fist, which trembled with anger. The next moment, he swung furiously to hit Suk-jin and punish him for those offensive words. But the main character managed to easily dodge the attack. Jin thought that his opponent was completely unfit for anything and even fell for his provocation. The stranger could not stand on his feet and fell to the ground, which further aggravated his shame. The bully couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Suk-jin asked if the guy was ashamed of his behavior. The main character continued to say that the stranger received a rebuff from someone who had recently started training and added that he had overestimated himself. These words again angered the bully. He shouted and ordered Suk-jin to shut up because he was just lucky and was already pretending to be someone I don't understand. The main character said that the guy was the first to start the conflict and therefore it was just self-defense on his part. After that, he rushed at his opponent. The next moment, Suk-jin delivered several powerful blows. The stranger could not resist because the opponent's movements were too fast. Still, he managed to attack back, but the main character was easily shortened by these blows. For some time, Suk-jin continued to dodge the enemy's attacks and thought that the bully considered himself very smart. But in fact, his blows were too predictable for the main character. The stranger was surprised and could not believe that his opponent was able to dodge all his attacks. Suk-jin replied that there was nothing difficult about it and even an idiot could do it. The bully was very angry because the main character humiliated him in front of everyone. Out of despair and anger, the guy decided to take extreme measures and grabbed his sword. The next moment, the angry stranger released his weapon and threatened that he would kill Suk-jin. The people who stood nearby were very scared and asked to call the guards so that they could stop the crazy guy. But Suk-jin himself was not at all afraid. On the contrary, his eyes burned with determination. For the guy, this was a challenge and an excellent test of his abilities. A moment later, an armed stranger attacked the main character, but he still rushed at his opponent without fear. With one precise kick, Suk-jin managed to knock the sword out of the enemy's hands. The stranger was amazed and silently watched as his weapon flew away. Time seemed to stop for the guy. Suk-jin asked his opponent what he was staring at and then punched the guy in the face with all his might. From such a powerful attack, the shocked hooligan flew back. After this, the stranger lost his balance and fell to the ground with a crash. Meanwhile, Suk-jin deftly caught the sword that he had recently knocked out of the villain's hands. People could not believe that a guy from the Suk family, who had just recently started training, could easily defeat a stranger who had been practicing martial arts for a long time. Some of the people also said that the main character was definitely a genius and that the elders of the Wasun and Jeonnam clans had a trained eye. Suddenly, several men wearing the same clothes appeared out of nowhere. They turned to Suk-jin and asked if he was okay. The next moment, these people surrounded the stranger who was still sitting on the ground in the middle of this defeat. One of the men looked angrily at the bully and told him not to even hope to escape. He threatened to directly contact the Yev family so that they would pay for this. Suk-jin turned to the guards and said that he himself wanted to kill the stranger. The men were very surprised. The main character brought the sword to the bully's throat, while he sat quietly and trembled with fear. Suk-jin said that the stranger should be glad that he did not draw his sword in a temporary fight. Otherwise, today would have been the guy's last day. After that, the main character looked at the bully with a crazy look and suggested that he should have taught the guy a lesson. Very frightened, the hooligan asked for forgiveness from the master and admitted that it was all his fault. To be continued suddenly, there was a sound of metal cutting through the air, after which the sword was thrown to the ground. The stranger fell on his back and white foam came out of his mouth from fear and excitement. Turned out that nothing terrible happened. Suk-jin only cut off a clump of the scoundrel's hair. After this, the guy turned to the guards and said that he had left the scoundrel with them. The man, amazed by what he saw, said that they would do everything properly and the gentleman didn't have to worry about it. After that, our heroes went home and the guards began to discuss what they had just seen. They were amazed by the guy's movement during the battle and his impeccable strategy. All this was also observed by some girl who was sitting on the balcony of the Red Palace. She thought that Suk-jin had really changed a lot. Judging by the expensive jewelry, the girl was from the nobility. She smiled slightly and said that she was becoming more and more interested. The servant turned to his mistress and asked if it was worth observing the main character a little more. But the girl suggested another option. She thought it would be better to grab him right now. She admitted that maybe she was wrong, but it was better than staying on the sidelines and waiting for the guy to go over to her brother's side. After that, she ordered the servant to find out everything about the main character and even the smallest details. The man immediately obeyed the order. The girl looked after Suk-jin as he left and thought that she would be glad if he continued to sit in his kennel. This girl's name was Suk-min Ryung and she wanted to use the main character for her own purposes because that was the only way she could win. Soon after the holiday, our heroes returned home and went about their usual business. Some guy was holding several small bags of money in his hands and begging Yoon to help him in some matter because he didn't ask for much. The guy was discouraged and said that he could not accept this. Moreover, he did not have such power. But the stranger continued to insist on his own, because he knew that Yoon and Mr. Suk-jin were like brothers. He said that there were rumors that Yoon became very strong after training with his master and even recently saved a servant when he fought against 5 hooligans. The stranger himself studied the martial arts of Sanji for 5 years and still achieved nothing. This upset the guy and therefore he really asked for help. He promised that if the master refused to take him as a student, he would retreat. But given his age, this was his last chance. Yoon felt sorry for the guy and he agreed to help, but immediately warned that there was no point in hoping for success because everyone knew the gentleman's difficult character. Suddenly, Suk Jinho appeared out of nowhere and asked what the guys were doing here. The guys bowed respectfully to Mr. the main character, ordered Yoon to kick out everyone who interfered with his training. For some time, the stranger silently looked at the gentleman and tried to gather his thoughts in order to turn to him and ask for a favor. The guy only thought that the gentleman's aura was seriously frightening, but he had to pull himself together because this was his last chance. The next moment, He fell to his knees and said that his name was Ma Ryong and said that he had been friends with Yoon since his childhood. Suk-jin believed that the guys were really close because Yoon still hadn't kicked him out. The main character immediately realized that the guy had come to him to learn martial arts. Ma Ryong promised that the master would be faithful until his death. Suk-jin was skeptical about this and therefore asked why he should have accepted it. The guy assured that the gentleman would not regret his choice because he could be useful in many ways. The main character looked at the guy and thought that his character seemed to be not bad and his eyes were full of perseverance, and it was clear from Yoon's face that he wanted to help his friend. In addition, Suk-jin thought that in order for Yoon to devote more time to training, it was necessary for someone to take on part of his responsibilities. But besides everything else, Suk-jin also had his own reasons for accepting this persistent guy as a student. The main character asked if Ma Ryong was aware of something. The guy did not understand what the gentleman was asking him about. The next moment, Suk-jin, as if with contempt, but at the same time with caution, explained that the guy had no talent at all. Ma Ryong did not argue with the master and admitted that he had no talent for martial arts at all. Suk-jin was surprised that the guy knew this and still didn't give up. Ma Ryong also said that his most important goal in this life was to become independent. He wanted to manage his life like charlatans who despised everyone. The guy knew that a drawn blade could both kill and save someone. Because of these words, Suk-jin remembered unpleasant incidents from his past lives. Ma Ryong forgave the master not to think that he was just a stubborn dreamer, because he understood perfectly well that he could die at any minute. But the guy was sure that life was given to everyone in order to challenge Suk-jin. This brought back old memories. After thinking a little and scratching his head, the main character nevertheless agreed to leave the guy on a probationary period. Ma Ryong sharply raised his head with sincere joy and looked at the master, not believing what he had just heard. But the guy's mood quickly changed when Suk-jin threatened that from now on he would watch Ryong's every move, and the guy would immediately be thrown out for the slightest failure. Yoon encouraged his friend by saying that the master still gave him a chance to prove himself. Hearing this, the guy jumped to his feet and sincerely thanked the main character. Finally, Suk-jin warned that the guy should under no circumstances set foot in the house, but he could be in the backyard. Ma Ryong agreed to all the conditions and added that the master would not regret giving him a chance. Suk-jin asked Yoon not to let anyone into the house anymore. After the main character left, Yoon said that his friend was lucky that the gentleman was nearby. Ma Ryong thanked the guy for being the first to give him a chance and not kick him out. The unexpected conversation of the guys was interrupted. Guests came to their master. Yoon was very surprised by this. A tall man with a sword in his hand stood in the courtyard and asked if Suk-jin was at home. Yoon timidly replied that it was so. Hearing this, the man ordered the guy to take him to the master because he had to deliver a letter from Miss Suk-min Ryong. Hearing this, Yoon became nervous and asked if something had happened to the mistress. The man rudely said that the guy was not here to ask questions and ordered him to just take him to his master. Suk-jin, having heard about the arrival of the guest, became indignant at the fact that today, everyone decided to ruin his day. Yoon asked his master to be quieter. The man approached the main character and rudely apologized for coming without warning. Suk-jin could not believe that this person allowed himself to communicate with him so disrespectfully and even thought that he had heard him incorrectly. The man asked what the problem was because he came here to deliver a letter from the lady. After that, he decided to escalate the situation even more and said that he did not know that a dog lived in this estate. Suk-jin decided to answer no less rudely and warned the man to be careful because this dog bites. The man got angry because he couldn't believe the guy's impudence, and Suk-jin, in addition, smiled insidiously and asked if the stranger knew that mad dogs could not be intimidated. The man suggested that someone had become too bold after their newly acquired fame. An ominous atmosphere hung between Lady Syakmi Ryong's servant and the main character. The next moment, the man rushed at Suk-jin in order to attack him and teach him a lesson on behalf of his mistress. The fist is approaching the protagonist's face with great speed, and the stranger is mentally making fun of his opponent, thinking that he didn't even have time to react, which is what was to be expected from the brat. But unexpectedly, Suk-jin somehow managed to dodge the attack at the very last moment, which greatly surprised the man. Now it was the turn of the main character to attack his opponent. While he was in shock, the guy hit the man in the face with all his might. From this attack, the wind rose and the man was thrown to the side, and all this was just from a blow with a fist. The uninvited guest could not resist, but said that no matter how painful it was for the man, he would have to endure it. After this, the main character began to deliver many blows to different parts of the man's body. His fighting skills helped him with this. The man was scared and couldn't believe that Suk-jin was aiming straight at the points through which the blood circulated. The last thing the arrogant man saw was how the protagonist's fist flew at him. Suk-jin, without hiding his sincere joy and smiling broadly, asked his opponent to taste his blow. The next moment, there was a loud sound that spread throughout the area and scared the birds sitting on the branches. Throwing Miss Sukmin Ryung's letter aside, the guy was indignant at the fact that weaklings love to wag their tongues and even dared to do such a thing in his own house. Yoon asked his master what to do with the letter. Suk-jin indifferently replied that because of this idiot he had a headache and he had no time for it now. Satisfied with himself, the main character looked into the sky and said that his defeated opponent had not completed his task and therefore he and Yoon should have taken care of it themselves. After some time, Suk-jin arrived to Miss Sukmin Ryung. She met him at her estate on the shore of a small pond. Everything around was strewn with flowers and greenery. While pouring tea for the guest, the girl said that she was informed about everything, after which she asked her brother why he reacted so sharply to this. Suk-jin replied that this was an excellent example for those who considered it their duty to humiliate him, because now they will know that the main character will not leave it so easily. The girl was amazed that the guy had really changed. Jin replied that if he had not done this, he would not be here and only 2 people would have attended his funeral. Sukmin Ryung laughed at this answer and was touched by how her Jin-ho had matured, but the main character was serious and crossed his arms over his chest and rudely asked, "Since when did he become her?" The girl asked the guy not to be so cold with her because she was his older sister. Suk-jin doesn't want to stay here for a long time and therefore asked why she called him. Sukmin Ryong sighed and decided to get straight to the point and said that she needed the help of the main character. The girl wanted Suk-jin to help her become the head of the Suk clan. Hearing this, the guy, without thinking for a moment, categorically refused. Min Ryung immediately became nervous because she suggested that the guy had already accepted the brother's proposal, but he replied that he didn't take anyone's side and, in general, he wasn't interested in it. The girl began to shower her brother with promises that as soon as power was in her hands, she would help him achieve whatever he wanted and even appoint him as the head of the detachment. Clenching her hand into a fist, Min Ryung added that their clan would have incredible power that the guy could not even dream of. But Suk-jin saw no point in this, because it would only benefit the clan. The girl reminded that the guy was also part of the clan and it was beneficial for him. The older sister continued to insist and said that now her brother needed support, but the main character easily refused this too. Zaekmai Ryung looked at the main character and could not believe that he was not at all interested in support and the struggle for power. The girl suggested that this could be so, because as soon as her brother succeeded in martial arts, he immediately attracted the attention of the elders of powerful clans, but he did not follow them. In addition, Suk-jin was able to defeat the lady's servant, who had been studying martial arts for several years. This happened because powerful chi energy circulated through the guy's veins. Suk-min Ryung believed that with the help of this energy, the main character was able to demonstrate his potential and talent, and therefore he had no reason to deceive her. Suk-jin broke the silence by saying that the lady could handle it without his help, after which he got up from the table and prepared to leave. Suk-min Ryung accepted her brother's decision, but asked him to spend more time with her because she was not that close to her brothers, and she felt more comfortable with Jin. Finally, the girl hoped that she and her brother would become closer, after which she smiled insidiously and reminded that she was not one of those people who quickly gave up. The news that Suk Jinho was able to defeat an experienced fighter reached the head of the Suk clan, who could not believe it. But the servant assured his master that his son was very dexterous. During the battle, the man was interested in how much progress the main character had made in the study of martial arts. The servant said that during the battle, the guy was able to defeat the man due to the fact that he aimed at the point where the blood flowed. And it was not just luck. The head of the clan wanted to meet with the guy, but the servant said that this couldn't be done. The man couldn't understand why and suggested that Suk-jin was injured during the battle. But everything turned out to be much simpler. Early in the morning, the main character left his estate alone and went to wander through the dense forest. Overcoming one climb after another, the guy noticed that the mountain remained the same, and thanks to it, he would not get lost. Suddenly, he heard strange but familiar sounds that were not typical for this place. This immediately attracted Suk Jin's attention. Let's quickly find out what's wrong. He quickly jumped up in order to quickly get to the source of the strange sound. Overcoming an increasing distance, the sound became louder, and now the main character could definitely determine that it was the clang of a weapon. Finally, he saw the source of this sound. In the distance stood two people, one of whom was armed with a halberd. It was a girl whose clothes were stained with dirt, and she herself could barely stand on her feet. The stranger, gritting her teeth, looked angrily at her opponent. Her opponent, although unarmed, looked frightening. His long beard and sharp claws betrayed his wild origins, and his crazy look only confirmed this. The man said that he was just bored and invited the girl to have some fun, after which he left. But suddenly something distracted him. The reason for this was Suk Jinho, who appeared out of nowhere and stood between the opponents. The guy immediately understood what was happening here. The main characters turned to the crazy man and asked if he wanted to have some fun with him first. The savage immediately snapped at Suk Jin and rudely asked who he was. But the main character replied that it didn't matter. The guy continued to say that the only thing that mattered was that the man dared to attack a woman in broad daylight and was walking out, so he was still that bastard. The exhausted girl said that this man was a demon of lust and asked the guy to be careful because he used poisons, and it was because of this that she was now in such a pitiful state. Suk Jin felt sorry for the poor girl who suddenly encountered trouble like this. Unfortunately, in Gango, not such things could be seen. Soon the guy's thoughts were interrupted. The wild man ran towards the main character in order to attack and said that the guy should not have let his guard down. But this was not the first time Suk Jin had encountered a similar situation and therefore was able to calmly dodge the attack of the demon of lust. The main character laughed at this ridiculous surprise attack from his opponent. The demon got nervous and asked how Suk Jin was able to dodge so much, to which the guy replied that he did not intend to stand like an idol. The main character noticed a stone lying nearby and decided to demonstrate to his opponent what a truly unexpected attack should have looked like. The next moment, Suk Jin kicked the stone with all his strength, which flew towards the demon of lust with great speed. In order to protect himself from this attack, the wild man put his knee forward and took a blow from the stone. After this, the demon said that this would not stop him and believed that if this was all that Suk Jin was capable of, then he was a mediocre idiot who just wanted to impress the girl. The man felt that he should have acted more decisively, and to do this, he concentrated dark, otherworldly energy in his hands. He threatened the main character that he would finish him off with 10,101. One blow, after which he tried to attack his opponent again. Suk Jin was again able to dodge the blow without much effort and said that the demon was even more of an idiot, since he was confident in the unpredictability of his attacks. The main character added that he was no longer used to fighting with guys who were only good at wagging their tongues. After which he hit the demons in the stomach with all his might. The enemy was shocked and his eyes hardened from piercing pain. The outcome of the battle was already a foregone conclusion. The wild man, having been severely injured, could no longer continue the fight and with his last strength, stood on his knees trying not to fall to the ground. Suk Jin looked at the defeated opponent and waited for the continuation because he knew that this was not the end. The guy prepared to finish what he started. He struck the villain several blows on the back. Unable to resist, the exhausted demon of lust fell to the ground, but he did not die. The main character just blocked his acupuncture points. Suk Jin turned to the stranger and said that for now, this was enough, because the main thing was that the girl was now safe. The girl could barely stand on her feet, but still found the strength to thank her savior. The guy assured that for him it was nothing. Suddenly, someone from the forest turned to the stranger. This attracted the attention of the girl and Suk Jin. The tall man was worried and asked what happened here. The stranger was glad to see him and called him her uncle. The girl rushed to the man and began to apologize and say that it was her fault, because she should have taken care of him properly. Suk Jin watched this conversation from the side and was surprised that the girl left her family and guide and walked to Gangho alone. The man continued to ask the lady what happened to her because she had no face because of fatigue. The girl replied that she had inhaled poison. The man sat the girl down on the ground and said that it would not be easy, but he would try to cleanse her of the toxin. The uncle put his hands on the lady's back and began to concentrate the chi energy in order to separate and extract the poison. The next moment, the girl's whole body glowed brightly and the man asked if the lady felt better. The girl replied that she felt better and thanked her uncle. The man was glad to hear this. After that, he approached Suk-jin and bowed respectfully and thanked him for his help. The man introduced himself by saying that his name was Baek Sang-gon. He was from the younger Peng family. The girl's name was Pang Na-young. The main character suggested postponing the acquaintance for now, because now it was better to take care of the guy who was lying on the ground nearby. Suk-jin was mentally indignant at the fact that every time it turned out that he was getting involved in someone else's business. And at this time, the girl told her uncle that this guy was a demon of lust. The man examined the guy and thoughtfully said that usually demons were quite strong creatures and could easily defeat even an experienced fighter. The girl said with admiration that Suk-jin was able to deftly deal with the demon and defeated him with just one blow. Hearing this, the main character thought that he should have left here as quickly as possible. The man was interested in these words. He turned to the guy and asked who he was, but the next moment he fell silent. To be continued, the place where Suk-jin had recently stood was now empty and the guy himself was nowhere to be seen. He seemed to have disappeared. The man wondered who this stranger was who could easily defeat such an opponent. He still felt the power of the demon because he had personally experienced the power of his poison. The girl was upset because the guy disappeared without even saying his name. Seeing this, the man promised to definitely find the stranger because there weren't many warriors of his level here. The lady was glad to hear this. Suk-jin went deep into the forest but still heard the voice of a man who said that he and the girl roughly knew where to look for him and it wouldn't take much time. The man added that it was not customary for the Pang family to remain in debt for the rescue and they had to properly thank the guy. The girl promised to make every effort for this. Meanwhile, Suk-jin-ho continued to wander through the forest until late at night. Only the light of the moon did not allow him to get lost. The main character seemed to be looking for something. The guy told himself that what he needed was definitely somewhere here, because everything was exactly the same as before. Suk-jin continued to walk through the dark forest and looked under every bush without losing hope of success. Suddenly, the guy began to smile because he had finally found what he had come so far for. Suk-jin-ho looked at some unusual plant that was illuminated by the moonlight and was pleased with himself because his memory did not let him down. The main character was about to pick the plant, but something caught his attention. A black cat with big yellow eyes looked at the guy and hissed as if defending his schedule. Suk-jin-ho realized that the animal was stubborn and therefore politely asked to be allowed to use a little force. The cat seemed to understand what the guy was saying and therefore was completely covered in chi energy. The main character immediately realized that this cat was a spiritual being and also very young. Suddenly, the cat calmed down and turned his attention to something. The next moment, the animal jumped away from Suk-jin and hissed again. The guy realized that the cat was scared because he could see his inner strength. The main character extended his hand to the cat and asked him not to be afraid. The guy wanted to feed the animal and therefore began to look for another plant, which was ginseng. Sometime later, Suk-jin and the cat found a suitable place for a meal. The guy managed to find 2 ginseng roots that were 60 years old. Suk-jin and the black cat began to eat this plant with great appetite. Chewing well, the main character thought that judging by the taste, he had made the right choice. The guy already felt with all his might how energy filled his body. He knew that he had to immediately absorb it and pave the way for 100 years of energy in his body. With her help, Suk-jin planned to combine his chi energy with the energy of the great god of the earth. The main character began to sit quietly and concentrate on the task at hand, while chi energy hovered around him. After some time, the guy finished his meditation and breathed out a sigh of relief, because the goal for which he had come all this way had been achieved. Suddenly, a black cat appeared behind Suk-jin. The guy was very surprised that he had been waiting for him all this time. I got to my feet. The guy thanked the animal for protecting him and promised that if they met again, he would definitely repay him. But the spiritual animal seemed to not want to be separated from the main character and therefore pressed against his leg and then began to purr. Suk-jin was surprised and assumed that the black cat wanted to go with him. The animal meowed approvingly. The guy did not argue and put the cat on his shoulder and said that he had already come up with a name for him and now he would be called Blackie. It was early morning. The main character was only now able to return home. The black cat looked around like a proprietor and climbed onto the roof. Seeing this, Suk-jin said that now this territory was under the protection of Blackie. The animal meowed approvingly. The guy didn't take his eyes off his new friend and said that he didn't know how long he would stay in this estate. But while he was here, the cat didn't have to worry. Suddenly, someone addressed the main character in an excited voice and attracted his attention. It was Ma Ryong, who was going to the guy along with Yoon and the nanny. The servants were very worried because Suk-jin left without warning them and didn't even leave a note. The nanny happily hugged the main character and asked if everything was fine with him. But there was nothing to worry about. Yoon asked his master how his mission went. Suk-jin replied that everything went well because he was able to do everything he planned. The nanny drew attention to the black cat that was clinging to her and, very surprised, asked where it came from. Suk-jin stated that his name was Chernish and from that day on, he would live with them as his subordinate. The nanny was stroking the cat and did not understand how such a small ball of fur could act as a subordinate. But Suk-jin replied that the animal was now very dangerous and quite strong. The main character explained that the cat had eaten a sufficient amount of ginseng and therefore now there was great power in his body. But the girl still did not believe that the cute animal could be dangerous. Ma Ryong envied the black cat because the animal was already a subordinate and the guy was still on probation. Suk-jin saw the guy's puzzlement and asked what happened to him. Ma Ryong decided to answer that he just got excited when he saw his master. After this, the main character asked how the guy's training went, to which Ma Ryong replied that he worked hard with Yoon. Suk-jin replied that he would check it later, but for now the guy wanted to rest, so he ordered his subordinates not to disturb him and mind their own business. The main character went to his chambers while his comrades tried to get to know the black cat better. The sun was already high. Blackie was still sitting on the roof and doing the usual things for a cat. The general silence and calm were interrupted only by the loud screams of Ma Ryong. The guy tried to advance in the study of martial arts, but the black cat was not impressed at all and he yawned from boredom. Ma Ryong noticed this and took it as a personal insult because the cat clearly considered himself superior to him. The guy tried to count the animals, but it soon became clear that it simply ignored him. Suk-jin and Yoon laughed when they saw this because they couldn't believe that the guy was quarreling with a black cat. It seemed to Ma Ryong that Chernish was not an ordinary cat. This guess was confirmed by the main character and said that he could be upset if he was treated so rudely. Suk-jin added that the cat could even hit the offender. But Ma Ryong complained that the only one who was insulted here was him. The next moment Chernish hit Ma Ryong in the face as if punishing him for rudeness and lies. Yoon was shocked by what he saw and Suk-jin reminded him that it was better not to anger the cat. Suddenly, the animal began to walk in a circle and meow. The main character immediately assumed that it wanted to show them something. A moment later, Blackie pushed off the ground and jumped high. While in the air, the cat began to perform some kind of bizarre dance, which was accompanied by various acrobatic elements. But this performance did not last long. The cat sank to the ground and went about his business. Ma Ryong was shocked and did not understand what had just happened. Out of surprise and fear, the guy began to lose his balance and fall to the ground because he could not stand on his feet. He couldn't believe that the cat was capable of such a thing. Suk-jin explained that Cheonish was not just a cat, but a spiritual being and this was nothing to him. The main character ordered his surprised comrades not to dare talk about this to anyone else. The conversation about the animal was interrupted by the sudden visit of a guest noticed by Suk-jin. The guest approached the owner of the estate with confident steps until he suddenly stopped nearby. A tall man dressed in black bowed respectfully and greeted Mr. Suk-jin. With a sincere smile on his face, he announced that the head of the Suk clan wanted to meet with the main character. After some time, Suk Jinho was already visiting the head of the clan. This time, the guy met with his grandfather. They greeted each other, after which Suk-jin asked if his relative was feeling well. But the old man rudely replied that he could not feel good when his grandson ran somewhere without warning anyone. The guy replied that he did not see the need to report his every step. The elderly man was unhappy that the main character contradicted him, but Suk-jin said that this was not so, and he was only telling the truth. The old man recalled that most people in conversations with him were always afraid or deliberately lied to Suk-jin, but he did not answer anything and only remained silent. Still, the man suggested forgetting about it and said that something good had clearly happened because the guy was literally glowing. The main character confirmed this and said that the head of the clan was very attentive. After this, the old man asked if the guy had changed his mind about leaving the estate to study martial arts. Suk-jin confirmed this and said that there was nothing for him to do here. The elderly man tried to convince the guy there by saying that this was his house. Suk-jin knew about it, but this did not mean that he had to always stay here. The head of the clan agreed with his grandson, but said that usually it was daughters and not sons who left their home. After which he made a gloomy expression on his face. The main character became just as gloomy and said that he was no longer what he was before. After that, the guy looked up and mysteriously said that the previous one would not have dared to leave the house. Suk-jin assumed that the head of the clan had some other reason why he did not want the guy to leave. But the old man denied it and explained that he was just worried about his grandson. The main character thanked for the concern, but said that he was not such an important person, whose family could somehow influence the entire life of the estate. I heard this old man cross his arms over his chest and asked his grandson to stop hanging noodles on his ears, because now no one would believe these words. Suk-jin smiled wickedly and suggested that the head of the clan must already know a lot of things. These words made the old man think. He couldn't believe that this kid had long ago come up with a plan to escape from the estate. The head of the clan took into account what happened the other day and decided that the guy was quite capable of creating a brilliant plan. The elderly man decided to ask his grandson a question, but asked him to answer it honestly. He asked what the guy was going to do after leaving and whether the dragon's tail was not enough for him. When he heard about the dragon, the main character began to smile and acted as if he did not understand what his grandfather was talking about. But the old man immediately realized that the dragon's tail was not enough for the guy, so he asked what Suk-jin thought about growing a dragon himself. The main character calmly replied that this did not concern him and that his brothers should have dealt with this. But the head of the clan recalled that the legacy of Buddha flowed in the guy's blood. Suk-jin clarified that this was only half and therefore he did not want to interfere. Finally, the old man realized that the guy could not be convinced and assumed that the guy would not return here again. Suk-jin confirmed this. The head of the clan asked her grandson to stay at least until his birthday and not to forget to come and chat with his grandfather more often. Suk-jin was surprised, but could not answer anything. The elderly man looked at the guy with a stern look and asked him to fulfill at least this request. Reluctantly, the main character agreed. Hearing this, the old man was pleased and said that now Suk-jin could go about his business. The relatives quickly said goodbye. The main character hastily left the room and closed the door behind him. After the guy left, the head of the clan suggested that there was still something unusual about him and asked what his subordinate thought about it. The man replied that the main character had changed a lot and it only took him a few days to do this. The servant did not believe that this was possible in such a short period of time. The head of the clan thought and expressed regret over the decision of his grandson, which did not coincide with his expectations. The old man suggested that if only the guy had stayed, he would certainly have become the dragon of their clan. Soon, Suk-jin returned home with the black cat who accompanied him. Because of the conversation with his grandfather, the guy was in no mood. His loyal subordinates immediately approached him and asked how everything went. You noticed that the gentleman's conversation lasted longer than usual, but the main character said that this was not so, and he was delayed because on the way, he looked at Miss Sukmi Ryong. Yoon did not expect to hear about the lady and assumed that something had happened, but Suk-jin assured that nothing serious had happened. The main character said that the girl did not have time to start her monologue when Blackie appeared and all her attention turned to him. One could say that the cat helped the guy a lot. Suk-jin was very tired and hungry, so he told Yuna to ask the nanny to prepare lunch for him. The servant immediately obeyed. The main characters thought that now he wanted to spend time quietly, but something told him that he would not be able to do this. He was absolutely right because two familiar figures appeared at the entrance to his estate. A tall man and a girl stood at the entrance for some time and could not decide to call the owner. These were Baek Sang-gon and Pang Na-young, whom we knew. The girl was very happy that they were finally able to find the Suk estate. Sometime before this, uninvited guests came to the main palace of the clan because they thought that Suk-jin was here. Pang Na-young was worried and wasn't sure that they could come in without an invitation, but Baek Sang-gon reassured the girl by saying that they just wanted to express their gratitude. The man approached the guard and introduced himself, saying that they wanted to see young Mr. Suk-jin and therefore asked to notify him of their visit. Suddenly, a guy approached the man and greeted Mr. Peck and asked what business he had come for. Baek Sang-gon said that he wanted to meet Suk Jin-ho. Hearing this name, the guy's face twisted in contempt. The man said that this benefactor saved his mistress and they would like to personally thank the main character and therefore asked the guy to take them to him. The guy agreed and asked the guests to follow him, but he could not believe that Suk-jin saved the lady. The guy led the guests to the main character's house, but his steps were heavy and for some reason his legs were shaking. As if sensing the approach of uninvited guests, Suk-jin had some kind of bad feeling. The black cat meowed in agreement with his owner. Baek Sang-gon and Pang Na-young were already very close and smiled when they saw their savior. The guy who accompanied them was gloomy. He couldn't understand how the guests met Suk-jin in the first place. Baek Sang-gon and Bang Na-young respectfully bowed to the owner of the estate and said that they came here to personally thank the main character for the recent incident. Suk-jin decided to show his hospitality and, assuming that the guests were tired after the journey, asked them to go inside the house, which was quite modest but rather cozy. Baek Sang-gon turned to the guy who accompanied them and said that they would handle the rest themselves. The guy asked if he really shouldn't have come with them. The man replied that they would like to talk with Suk-jin alone. The guy agreed with this and said that later they would send someone to escort them to the guest room. When the guests and the owner of the house left, the guy turned to his subordinate and told him to look after them and find out what kind of relationship this bastard had with the Peng family. The servant doubted that he would succeed because Baek Sang-gon was a martial arts master, but the guy forced him to obey. After that, he thought that in the Peng family, everyone was born with stylish chi energy, and if he could make friends with them, then his place in the sun would be guaranteed. After that, he looked at Pang Na-young. I suggested that she could become a wonderful wife for him. Soon everything was ready. There were 3 cups of tea on the table for the guests and the owner of the estate. When everyone sat down at the table, Baek San said that they wanted to keep the meeting private. But now it seemed that they had aggravated the current situation in the Seahawk family. The guy said that everything was fine. The man looked at the guy carefully and thought that he never ceased to amaze him. After all, such a beautiful girl was sitting in front of him and he didn't even bat an eyelid. Although his brother, who accompanied them, immediately noticed her, suddenly Pang Na-young took out some kind of package and embarrassedly put it on the table. Suk-jin asked what it was. The girl began to unwrap the package and say that it was a small gift because she wanted to thank the guy for saving him in this way. The package contained a golden tablet. The girl explained that it was the tablet of their family, and they often used it. It offered many privileges and cost a lot of money. Seeing the golden plaque, Suk-jin was very surprised and could not believe that his guests called it a small gift. Pang Na-young replied that the lady did not think so and added that the girl would not leave him until he accepted this gift, because she was stubborn in such matters. The main character said that he would gladly accept such an expensive gift. Pang Na-young beamed with happiness and thanked Suk-jin, but the guy thought that he should have thanked the girl. The next moment, the main character smiled insidiously and thought that with this, he would at least have the money that he would definitely need to escape from the empire. When all the thanks were expressed and the gifts were given, Baek Sang-gon and Pang Na-young decided not to bother Suk-jin with their presence anymore and therefore got ready to leave. The main character was already saying goodbye to his guests, but suddenly the girl asked if the guy had a good rest. Suk-jin didn't understand why she was asking this, but he answered in the affirmative. After that, Pang Na-young blushed with embarrassment and tried to say something but couldn't find the words. Suk-jin noticed this but didn't understand what exactly the girl wanted from him. Finally, Pang Na-young timidly asked if the main character wanted to fight her. This question discouraged Suk-jin and began to doubt whether he had heard everything correctly. Nevertheless, the guy came to his senses and agreed with the girl and said that they could start the fight as soon as she was ready. Pang Na-young was already holding her weapon in her hand and Suk-jin, taking out his sword, said that he would give the girl a head start for a couple of minutes. The lady grabbed her halberd tightly and promised to give it her all in this battle. The girl smoothly raised the sharp blade up in order to swing well. After that, Pang Na-young sharply cut the air with her weapon, causing a small wind to rise. It seemed that there was no point in this, but the girl didn't think so. She froze in place and began to concentrate. The next moment, Many dangerous streams of chi energy flew towards Suk-jin. The main character was surprised by the girl's skills, but still, without much effort, he was able to deftly dodge all the attacks. Pang Na-young was shocked that she didn't manage to hit Suk-jin even once. Then the girl decided to change her tactics and sharply responded from the ground and rushed towards the main character to engage him in close combat. Not wanting to lose, Pang Na-young swung her weapon with all her might, leaving a trail of chi energy. But this blow did not reach the target because Suk-jin sat down on his feet in time. After this, the main character stated that now it was his turn to attack. His words sounded serious because the guy had no intention of giving in. Suk-jin used his speed to get close to the enemy and then tried to attack him, but the girl managed to block the guy's blow. Nevertheless, Miss Pang Na-young was still impressed by the attack of the protagonist. The girl knew that despite the determined appearance of her opponent, he did not really use his strength, but at the same time he was able to attack her so strongly. The lady also suggested that judging by the guy's lightning-fast reaction, he had been studying martial arts for a long time and his piercing gaze indicated that the guy knew all her subsequent actions. Unable to withstand Suk-jin's onslaught, the girl stumbled a little and began to lose her balance. For the main character, this was a great chance to end the fight right now and he decided to take advantage of it immediately. But the girl did not intend to lose the fight so easily because of an absurd mistake and therefore, gathering her strength, she again tried to attack her opponent. Pang Na-young thought that she had the advantage over a long distance and therefore Suk-jin could not avoid her attack. But suddenly, in an instant, all the girl's hopes were dispelled because she saw something that surprised her very much. Suk-jin was well aware of his disadvantageous position and therefore decided to reduce the distance between him and his opponent as quickly as possible. To do this, he used the sword that served as his support. The main character pushed away from the sword and in the next moment disarmed his opponent with one sharp kick. The halberd flew out of the girl's hands, leaving her unable to continue the battle. But Suk-jin didn't even think about stopping. The guy ran some distance to get his opponent's weapon. The next moment, the main character demonstrated his skill in wielding a halberd, which struck the girl. The sharp blade stopped a few centimeters from Miss Pang Na-young's throat, causing her to raise her hands. This was a symbol that the fight was over. Suk-jin smiled and was pleased with his victory, but he was even more pleased with the fight with a strong opponent. Pang Na-young raised her hands up in recognition of her defeat. Absolute silence reigned for a while. The girl looked at the main character with fascination and still could not understand how he managed to win. Finally, Suk-jin lowered his weapon and said that he was not very experienced and therefore was waiting for advice from the mistress. But the girl answered with admiration that she gently wanted him to succeed. Returning the weapon to Pang Na, the main character said that she had good technique and fast attacks. But she often repeated the same thing. The girl thought that she should have attacked when her opponent did not expect it. After that, she remembered how during the last attack, Suk-jin concentrated all her attention on his sword, but ended up kicking her. The girl called the main character smart. Next, Pang Na-young asked if Suk-jin-ho wanted to fight her again tomorrow. The guy thought for a moment. Still, he agreed and said that it would be good practice for him. The girl was very happy and thanked Suk-jin. After that, they said goodbye. Baek Sung-gon at first thought that Pang Na was giving in to the guy, but he soon realized that he really had incredible abilities and now Suk-jin was on par with 6 dragons. The girl beamed with happiness and agreed with her uncle. The man seeing this assumed that she really liked the main character. But from the look of the girl, everything was already clear. Confused, Pang Na-young turned in the opposite direction and bitterly said that she did not understand what the man was talking about. But soon she turned to face her uncle again and asked with great enthusiasm if the man didn't want to see the peak of Suk-jin's capabilities. Baek Sang-gon thought about it and said that after he saw the main character's abilities, he was interested in knowing what their limit was. The man hoped that as soon as the right moment came, they would get to know Suk-jin better and properly thank him for his help. The girl agreed with this. The small table was littered with various scrolls and documents. Someone was actively working. The next head of the Suk clan, named Suk Myung-il, was sitting at this table and was scrupulously thinking about something. The man asked his subordinate whether Jin-ho had really changed as much as everyone was saying. The servant confirmed this because he was personally convinced of it. He said that the boy who recently could barely speak became so brave that he was able to reject the offer of the elders of powerful clans and even defeat Pinong. The servant added that the talent did not manifest itself immediately. Si Young-il said that it turned out that the gray mouse was actually a dragon. The man also decided to say that there were rumors that Lady Mi Rong refused Crown Prince Jin Rong, but he still insisted on his own. Suk Myung-il, hearing this, sighed heavily and was annoyed because this child did not obey him at all. After this, the head of the clan asked what the man thought about this. The servant felt that they should not interfere in this yet. At this time, Suk Myung-il was carefully looking for something in his book. The head of the clan thought that he should have personally talked to Jin Ryong because his plan was not that bad, but the guy would not be able to make it come true. Despite the fact that the Peng clan was located on the very outskirts of the Five Lands, its members were very smart and the most powerful Murim was practiced in the clan itself. Suk Myung-il himself wanted to get the jade leaf of this clan. The servant said that he would do this. Suk Myung-il also asked to tell Jin Ryong not to do anything stupid again, because if the relationship between the two clans deteriorates, then the guy will end. A man stroked the black cat and asked if Suk Jinho had told him about it. The main character saw this and was surprised that Chernish reacted so calmly to this man. The guest kindly greeted Suk Jin and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. The main character also respectfully greeted the guest. It was his uncle named Doc Volt. After some time, they were already sitting at the table. The man said that he had heard rumors that the guy had changed a lot. Suk Jin replied that he was planning to continue to become better because he was no longer a child. Doc Volt recalled that the main character was only 17 years old. But Suk Jin replied that he was already an adult and asked if his uncle had heard about the methods of growing up of the head of Suk. The man replied that he knew very well about these methods. Suddenly the main character thanked his uncle. Suk Dak Volt was one of the heads of the Suk clan that ruled Pyeoguk. He was the illegitimate son of the head of the clan, just like the main character. Therefore, the man was the only one who perfectly understood Suk Jin-ho and always tried to help him. The man never ignored the guy and was always kind to him, and after meeting the head of the clan, he always went to Suk Jin and spent time with him. The main character believed that since he had made a promise to the previous owner of his body, he needed to show respect to Dak Volt. Suk Jin asked his uncle what was bothering him. The man couldn't believe that the boy he remembered from the cradle had figured him out. The guy replied that the man didn't know how to hide his emotions at all. The main character asked Doc Volt to tell it like it was. The man reluctantly said that he needed the guy's help. The head of the clan said that Pyeoguk was in danger and they needed the power of Baeksangon. Enemies had long been targeting these lands and the man was afraid that their plans could come true. Doc Volt added that so far they had no evidence, only assumptions, but he assured that the enemies were definitely planning something terrible. Suk Jin doesn't believe that Baeksan will agree to help, because he was not an ordinary soldier, but the strongest of warriors. And therefore, the guy advised his uncle to reconsider his plan. Doc Volt said that yesterday he made an appointment with the man, but he was busy. Also, Uncle heard that Suk Jin would have a special relationship with Miss Pang, and she even came to visit him. The main character said that these were just rumors and they barely knew each other. But he, of course, would try to negotiate with her, but did not promise anything. The inspired Doc Volt grabbed his nephew by the hand and asked him to arrange a meeting with Miss Pang Na Young, and then he would figure it out entirely on his own. Suk Jin asked why there was a delay and suggested meeting them right now. The man was very surprised to hear this. The next moment, the main character loudly said that the guests could already enter. Immediately, the doors to the house opened and Baeksangon and Pang Na Young appeared on the threshold. The girl was glad to see Suk Jin again, but her uncle, who obviously heard the relatives' conversation, was in no mood. Suk Dak Volt bowed respectfully and introduced himself and said that yesterday they were supposed to meet Baek. Sangon recognized the man and clarified whether he was the head of Sikpeng Pyeoguk. Suk Jin turned to the guests and asked them all to sit down at the table since they all already knew each other. Baeksangon assumed that the guy did not call them here to get acquainted and believed that it was because of yesterday's incident. Suk Jin honestly said that he had a request to Baeksangon. The main character put the Pong clan's golden tablet on the table and stated that he was returning it. The man was very surprised because he did not expect that someone could refuse such a valuable and expensive item. Suk-jin explained that he helped Miss Pang not for selfish reasons. After that, the guy explained that his further actions had nothing to do with what happened. To be continued, the guy asked to understand him correctly and said that he had to return this sign to Mr. Baek Sang-gon. After this, the main character said that he had a proposal for a man. Suk-jin said that by joining him, Baek Sang-gon would kill two birds with one stone and firstly, remove his curiosity and secondly, gain experience. The man timidly asked what the main character meant when he spoke about curiosity. Suk-jin replied that he knew that the man was interested in one of the best bandits named Genju. Baek Sang-gon asked if the guy was confident that he could go against Genju. Suk-jin replied that if the man doubted his abilities, he could test them himself. After that, the main character looked confidently at the man and asked if he was ready to fight him right now. After some time, the opponents stood opposite each other in the courtyard of the estate. Dak Volt and Pang Na-young watched them from the side. Dak Volt was wondering if Suk-jin could cope with Baeksan's iron fist. The delighted Miss Pang Na-young was sure that the fight would last a long time. After that, the girl said that Mr. Suk-jin-ho was stronger than he seemed. These words surprised Dak Volt. The man thought that although the guy had changed, the opponent's forces were at completely different levels. Suk-jin-ho drew his sword and asked his opponent if he was ready to start the fight. Baek Sang-gon was absolutely ready and even wished good luck to the main character. The next moment, Suk-jin announced the beginning of the battle and rushed into battle. No matter how sharp Suk-jin's attack was, Baek Sang-gon was still able to dodge because he was a much more experienced martial artist. Nevertheless, the man admitted that the main character's movements were fast and the aura emanating from him was serious. Although the enemy was young, Baek Sang-gon decided to fight him with full strength and therefore the man took a fighting pose. The experienced warrior began to concentrate the energy of chi. He himself did not notice how he used the power of the divine fist. Baek Sang-gon looked at Suk-jin and was already anticipating his imminent victory. But first, the man had to figure out what to do with the speed of the main character. So with a sharp movement of his hand, he directed the flow of energy towards the enemy. It seemed that the blow was about to reach the main character, causing a large, gusty wind to rise, but Suk-jin stood inviolably in place, as if she did not realize the danger. Suddenly Baek Sang-gon seemed to be struck by lightning from surprise. The energy flow smashed the stones that were lying on the ground into smithereens, but it did not cause any harm to Suk-jin himself. He continued to stand in place. The man was very surprised because the main character did not try to defend himself and did not even blink an eye. Baek Sang-gon continued to send streams of chi energy, but Suk-jin only now moved. The guy put his hand in front of him and began to concentrate energy in it that looked like a flame. The next moment, two streams of energy hit each other. This was a kind of test of the strength of their opponent, the results of which both fighters would take advantage of. Suk-jin understood that he and his opponent were on completely different levels and therefore the guy needed to carefully analyze his actions in order to launch a counterattack. Baek Sang-gon prepared to use the Iron Fist technique and warned his opponent that he would fight half-heartedly. The main character agreed without further ado, as if he understood that it was a mistake. The next moment, the man launched many strong attacks, but Suk-jin managed to survive and defend himself from these blows. After this, the main character thought that victory was not important to him. The guy just wanted to show what Suk-jin was capable of and pushed off on the ground in order to get closer to the enemy. Baek Sang-gon said that the main character intended to attack him, but could not because the guy decided to close the distance. The next moment, a powerful blow hit the man, causing a loud sound that shook the air. Baek Sang-gon immediately realized his mistake, because while he was thinking about attacking his opponent, the guy acted unpredictably. For this, the man paid. He decided to rehabilitate himself and immediately attacked in response. But Suk-jin managed to jump away in time, which is why a powerful blow hit the ground, smashing the stones into smithereens. The man realized that the guy seemed to know all his actions in advance and besides, he was amazed by the strength of his opponent. But the battle continued and the opponents decided to attack each other again with particular zeal. It seemed that they were fighting on equal terms. The blows did not cause any harm to any of them, but only raised huge gusts of wind. The opponents again bounced away from each other to recover and think through further attacks. Baek Sang-gon was worried and wondered if he would be able to see the limits of the main character's powers. The man examined Suk-jin and decided that it was worth the risk for him. The guy asked his opponent not to give in to him and attack with full force because he knew that the man wanted to see his abilities. Baeksan decided to accept this request and began to concentrate. He thought that before this he had only used part of his strength, but now the guy would not be able to dodge his attack. The next moment, a huge amount of chi energy was released from the man's body. He was determined to see all the guy's abilities. Baek-sang-gon used the Heaven and Earth Divine Fist technique, which was comparable to the powers of a deity, and sent a powerful stream of energy towards Suk-jin. The power of the Pung clan was impressive. A huge dome of bright light rose above the estate and a loud explosion echoed throughout the area. Ma Ryong had to squint his eyes and cover himself with his hand, in order to protect himself from the strong gusts of wind that rose after the explosion. The guy was indignant and argued that he shouldn't have gone so far, but Pang Na-young calmed him down, saying that everything was under control. Ma Ryong turned to Yoon and expressed to him his worries that something could have happened to Suk-jin, but the guy was sure that their master could handle it. The next moment, the loud laughter of Baek-sang-gon, who was happy that he was able to achieve his goal, echoed throughout the estate. Suk-jin, who didn't have a scratch on him, suggested that the man end the fight there because he thought that he had already seen enough. Pang Na was happy and said that nothing else should have been expected from Suk-jin. Suk-myung could not believe that his nephew had survived the battle against an experienced fighter from the Pang clan. Ma Ryong, almost crying with happiness, swore that he did not doubt his master for a minute, and Yoon laughed because he remembered that just recently, his friend had said something completely different. Baek-sang-gon told the main character that such a talent as his should have been developed and not hidden. Suk-jin assured that he had no intention of not showing his strength. After that, the guy looked at Suk-myung and added that he wanted to help a very important person to him. The man was very touched by such sincerity and care of his nephew. I saw that the main character Baek-sang-gon was capable and gladly agreed to help. Pang Na-young was very happy about it. The man thought that the more he learned about Suk-jin, the more amazed he was, and decided that it was time to write a report for his clan. Baek-sang-gon was pleased and already anticipated that everyone in the clan would be surprised when they found out that he had met the sleeping dragon of the Suk clan. Among the dense forests towered Mount Hygo, on which was located a small building of the Suk clan. Our heroes confidently moved along a small forest path. The entire territory around belonged to Sikpeng Pyaguk. Among the group was one of the heads of the Suk clan, who walked silently at the end and thought about whether he had done the right thing. Shortly before this, all our heroes gathered in the main palace of the clan to discuss cooperation. The man thought that this was a kind of diversionary maneuver. Suk-jin said that this was not entirely true and added that they had to increase the ranks of the guards to minimize the incidence of escapes. The head of the clan said that it was not so important because first it was necessary to return those who had escaped, and that is why it was necessary to share power. Suk-jin was not sure that the traitor escaped